The Galactic Empire was one of the most powerful forces in the universe, stretching across thousands of star systems. It ruled with strength, and its soldiers were known for their unmatched skill in battle. They had conquered countless worlds, and no one dared challenge their authority. For them, Earth was nothing more than a small, distant planet, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. They had been watching the humans for years, but they saw no reason to worry. To them, humanity was a primitive species, barely advanced enough to be noticed. The Empire's emperor had made the decision to take Earth for the Empire's ever-expanding territory. He believed that it was time to conquer this insignificant world and add it to their collection. He sent word to his fleet, giving the order to prepare for an invasion. A large armada of warships, each more powerful than anything Earth had ever seen, was set to begin its journey to the Blue Planet. The humans, however, had other plans. They had been expecting this day for years. For decades, Earth's governments and military forces had quietly been preparing for the possibility of an alien invasion. While the world's leaders had kept the news of the growing threat under wraps, they had made sure that every corner of their planet was ready. Scientists had worked tirelessly on secret projects, developing new technologies that could protect Earth from an attack. They built hidden defense systems, powerful weapons, and even ships designed to take on the might of the Empire itself. No one outside of a few trusted individuals knew the true extent of humanity's preparation. As the Empire's fleet neared Earth's orbit, the humans watched closely. They had no intention of simply submitting to the Empire's will. They were ready for war, and they had a message for their invaders. The first warning came in the form of a simple transmission. The message was brief but clear. It was broadcasted across the Empire's fleet, reaching every ship in their armada. "We warned you to run." At first, the message seemed like a joke to the Empire's commanders. They laughed it off, thinking it was just the desperate cry of a weaker species trying to act brave. After all, they were the Empire. Who could stand against them? They had never faced an enemy as powerful as themselves, and they had no reason to believe that Earth could be any different. But as the fleet moved closer, there was an uneasy tension in the air. The humans were not just any species. They were unpredictable, resilient, and had a deep, unshakable love for their home. The Empire had underestimated them, but that mistake was about to be revealed in full force. The human leaders, including their top military commanders, watched the Empire's fleet approach from their command centers. The warships grew larger as they entered Earth's atmosphere, their weapons ready to strike. But the humans were not afraid. They had prepared for this moment, and they knew they could not afford to fail. At the head of the human forces was Admiral Lucas Kane, a seasoned military leader who had spent his entire life preparing for a conflict like this. He was known for his calm and strategic mind, always thinking several steps ahead of the enemy. He had witnessed the Empire's power firsthand through intelligence reports and knew exactly how dangerous they could be. But Kane also understood the one thing that the Empire had overlooked: the strength of human determination. "We've trained for this," Admiral Kane said to his crew, his voice steady and calm. "We've built this fleet for this exact moment. The Empire will learn that they've made a mistake. Today, we show them that humanity is not to be underestimated." As the fleet entered Earth's orbit, the humans made their move. They activated their cloaking systems, hidden from the Empire's sensors. The human ships moved silently through space, their movements precise and calculated. The Empire had no idea that the humans were already in position. The first wave of attacks came as a surprise. Sudden bursts of energy beams struck the Empire's lead ships, taking out their shields and disabling their weapons. The Empire's fleet was caught off guard. Their ships were not prepared for such an attack, and they scrambled to defend themselves. But the humans were fast and efficient, launching waves of missiles and energy blasts that struck their targets with deadly accuracy. Inside the Empire's flagship, the Emperor's top commanders were frantic. They had never seen anything like this before. The humans were not weak. They were strong, and they fought with everything they had. "What is happening?" One of the commanders shouted. "Where did they come from? How are they doing this?" The answer was simple. The humans had prepared for this moment. They had seen the Empire's strength, and they had refused to bow to it. Earth was not going to fall without a fight. The Galactic Empire was one of the most powerful forces in the universe, stretching across thousands of star systems. It ruled with strength, and its soldiers were known for their unmatched skill in battle. They had conquered countless worlds, and no one dared challenge their authority. For them, Earth was nothing more than a small, distant planet, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. They had been watching the humans for years, but they saw no reason to worry. To them, humanity was a primitive species, barely advanced enough to be noticed. The Empire's emperor had made the decision to take Earth for the Empire's ever-expanding territory. He believed that it was time to conquer this insignificant world and add it to their collection. He sent word to his fleet, giving the order to prepare for an invasion. A large armada of warships, each more powerful than anything Earth had ever seen, was set to begin its journey to the Blue Planet. The humans, however, had other plans. They had been expecting this day for years. For decades, Earth's governments and military forces had quietly been preparing for the possibility of an alien invasion. While the world's leaders had kept the news of the growing threat under wraps, they had made sure that every corner of their planet was ready. Scientists had worked tirelessly on secret projects, developing new technologies that could protect Earth from an attack. They built hidden defense systems, powerful weapons, and even ships designed to take on the might of the Empire itself. No one outside of a few trusted individuals knew the true extent of humanity's preparation. As the Empire's fleet neared Earth's orbit, the humans watched closely. They had no intention of simply submitting to the Empire's will. They were ready for war, and they had a message for their invaders. The first warning came in the form of a simple transmission. The message was brief but clear. It was broadcasted across the Empire's fleet, reaching every ship in their armada. "We warned you to run." At first, the message seemed like a joke to the Empire's commanders. They laughed it off, thinking it was just the desperate cry of a weaker species trying to act brave. After all, they were the Empire. Who could stand against them? They had never faced an enemy as powerful as themselves, and they had no reason to believe that Earth could be any different. But as the fleet moved closer, there was an uneasy tension in the air. The humans were not just any species. They were unpredictable, resilient, and had a deep, unshakable love for their home. The Empire had underestimated them, but that mistake was about to be revealed in full force. The human leaders, including their top military commanders, watched the Empire's fleet approach from their command centers. The warships grew larger as they entered Earth's atmosphere, their weapons ready to strike. But the humans were not afraid. They had prepared for this moment, and they knew they could not afford to fail. At the head of the human forces was Admiral Lucas Kane, a seasoned military leader who had spent his entire life preparing for a conflict like this. He was known for his calm and strategic mind, always thinking several steps ahead of the enemy. He had witnessed the Empire's power firsthand through intelligence reports and knew exactly how dangerous they could be. But Kane also understood the one thing that the Empire had overlooked: the strength of human determination. "We've trained for this," Admiral Kane said to his crew, his voice steady and calm. "We've built this fleet for this exact moment. The Empire will learn that they've made a mistake. Today, we show them that humanity is not to be underestimated." As the fleet entered Earth's orbit, the humans made their move. They activated their cloaking systems, hidden from the Empire's sensors. The human ships moved silently through space, their movements precise and calculated. The Empire had no idea that the humans were already in position. The first wave of attacks came as a surprise. Sudden bursts of energy beams struck the Empire's lead ships, taking out their shields and disabling their weapons. The Empire's fleet was caught off guard. Their ships were not prepared for such an attack, and they scrambled to defend themselves. But the humans were fast and efficient, launching waves of missiles and energy blasts that struck their targets with deadly accuracy. Inside the Empire's flagship, the Emperor's top commanders were frantic. They had never seen anything like this before. The humans were not weak. They were strong, and they fought with everything they had. "What is happening?" one of the commanders shouted. "Where did they come from? How are they doing this?" The answer was simple. The humans had prepared for this moment. They had seen the Empire's strength, and they had refused to bow to it. Earth was not going to fall without a fight. Back on Earth, the Empire's forces were also beginning to feel the pressure. The ground invasion they had planned was being delayed by the human military, which used clever tactics to fight back. Despite being outnumbered, the humans used their knowledge of their own terrain to their advantage. The Empire's soldiers were not prepared for the kind of resistance they faced in Earth's cities and forests. The human forces knew their planet inside and out, and that made all the difference. The human resistance was proving more difficult than the Empire had ever imagined. What they saw as a simple conquest had turned into a complex and frustrating war. And as each day passed, more and more people from around the galaxy began to take notice of humanity's strength. Other alien species, many of whom had been under the Empire's control, started to question whether they could follow the humans' example. The Empire was starting to realize that they had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. The battle for Earth was far from over, but one thing was clear. Humanity had no intention of backing down. They had shown the Empire that they were not weak, and they would do whatever it took to defend their world. Admiral Kane looked at the screens in front of him, watching as the Empire's fleet struggled to hold its ground. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The humans had done the impossible. They had shown the Empire that no matter how powerful they were, they could be defeated. "We've just begun," Kane muttered under his breath. "And we're going to make sure they never forget the name Earth." The skies over Earth were filled with chaos. The Galactic Empire, once so sure of their victory, was now struggling to keep control. Humanity's unexpected response had thrown their entire plan into disarray. As the first battle continued, the Empire's fleet began to realize that this wasn't going to be as easy as they had imagined. Admiral Lucas Kane stood in the command center, watching the battle unfold on the massive screen in front of him. His hands rested on the edge of his desk, his eyes sharp and focused. The tension in the room was thick, but he remained calm. His fleet had already proven its ability to strike hard and fast, and now it was time to finish what they had started. The Empire's ships were large, imposing, and heavily armed, but they lacked the agility of the human fleet. The humans had designed their ships with speed in mind, using advanced technology that allowed them to move quickly and evade the Empire's attacks. As the human fleet darted around the Empire's warships, they fired precise energy blasts that pierced through the enemy's shields, leaving them vulnerable. The Empire's forces were disoriented. They weren't used to being outmaneuvered in space. Their commanders scrambled to regroup, but the human fleet was relentless. Ships came in waves, striking the Empire's vessels from unexpected angles before retreating back into the shadows of space. The human ships were cloaked, making it nearly impossible for the Empire to track them down. "Admiral, their tactics are unlike anything we've ever seen," one of the Empire's commanders said, his voice tinged with frustration. "How are they able to move so quickly?" The Empire had relied on its overwhelming numbers and firepower to crush any opposition. But the humans were using their minds, their creativity, and their passion for survival to turn the tide in their favor. Each move they made seemed carefully planned, as if they were one step ahead at every turn. Admiral Kane had anticipated this. His strategy was simple but effective. Hit fast, hit hard, and always keep the enemy guessing. Every time the Empire thought they had the upper hand, the humans would vanish into the blackness of space, only to strike again from another direction. On Earth, the human resistance was just as strong. The Empire's ground forces had begun their assault on major cities, But they quickly discovered that the humans were not easy to conquer. Earth's cities were a maze of defenses, and the Empire's soldiers were finding themselves trapped in areas they didn't fully understand. The humans had turned their home into a battlefield, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. In the heart of one of the major cities, a group of Empire soldiers marched down a street, their heavy boots echoing on the pavement. They had advanced without resistance, but they had no idea what was waiting for them ahead. With the Emperor's approval, Commander Varen quickly began preparing his forces for the next phase of the attack. His plan was to lure the human fleet into a trap. He would create the illusion of a retreat, drawing the humans deeper into the Empire's territory, where they would be surrounded by the full might of the Imperial fleet. Meanwhile, Admiral Lucas Kane and his fleet were preparing for whatever the Empire might throw at them next. After their victory in the first battle, Kane knew that the Empire would regroup and come back stronger. He had no illusions about the difficulty of the war ahead, but he was determined to protect Earth, no matter the cost. "We've shown them we can fight back," Kane said to his officers as they gathered in the command center. "But this is just the beginning. The Empire won't give up easily. We need to be ready for their next move." Kane's fleet had been reinforced with new technology, including better weapons and stronger shields. Humanity had learned from the first battle, and they had adapted quickly. They had also gathered intelligence on the Empire's tactics and weaknesses, which they would use to their advantage in the coming battles. But there was a sense of uncertainty in the air. No one knew when the Empire would strike, or where. Kane knew that the next attack could come at any moment, and they had to be ready for it. As the days passed, the tension grew. The human fleet remained on high alert, and the commanders reviewed their battle plans again and again. They couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Then, without warning, a message came through. It was a transmission from one of the Empire's ships, a large vessel that had been silent for days. The message was simple. "The Empire requests a ceasefire. We are willing to negotiate." Admiral Kane stared at the screen in disbelief. Was this a trap? The Empire had just been defeated, and now they were asking for peace. It didn't make sense. "We can't trust them," Kane said, shaking his head. "It's a trick. They're trying to draw us into a false sense of security." His officers nodded in agreement. No one believed that the Empire would simply give up after one defeat. They had learned from their past mistakes and knew that the Empire would only strike when they were least expected. "Keep your guard up," Kane ordered. "We'll stay in position and wait for any sign of their next move." But despite their caution, the message from the Empire weighed heavily on the minds of the human commanders. What if it was true? What if the Empire really wanted peace? Kane couldn't afford to take any chances. He decided to send a small team of diplomats to the Empire's fleet to discuss the possibility of a ceasefire. He chose the best negotiators humanity had to offer, people who had studied the Empire's ways and could navigate their complex political systems. The diplomats boarded a specially designed shuttle and made their way toward the Empire's flagship. The human crew was tense, but they remained hopeful that they might be able to find a peaceful solution. The journey was long, and the crew spent the time preparing for the worst. When they arrived at the Empire's flagship, they were greeted by cold silence. No welcoming party, no gestures of goodwill, just the cold, calculating stare of the Empire's officers. The humans were led into a stark, sterile room where Emperor Orvac himself awaited them. The atmosphere was thick with tension. The Empire's emperor stared at the humans, his eyes cold and calculating. "You've come to beg for mercy?" Orvac asked, his voice icy. The human negotiator stood tall, maintaining eye contact with the emperor. "We've come to talk about peace," he said. "We don't want war. We want our people to live." Orvac's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Peace? You still think you can survive this? You've made a grave mistake by resisting us." The meeting was far from over, and it was clear that the Empire wasn't ready to accept defeat. As the diplomats returned to the human fleet, they knew one thing for certain. The Empire was not seeking peace. They were preparing for the next phase of the war, and this time, they would not underestimate humanity. Admiral Kane watched the diplomats return with grim faces. The Empire had shown its true colors. Peace was no longer an option. The war was about to intensify, and humanity was ready for the challenge. "We've been warned," Kane said quietly. "Now we fight for our survival." The silence in the command center was deafening as Admiral Lucas Kane stared at the screen in front of him. The Empire had refused peace, and the diplomats had returned empty-handed. The war had escalated, and the next phase of the conflict was upon them. And so, the first battle for Earth began. It was only the beginning, but the message had been made clear. Humanity was ready to defend their home, no matter the cost. The Empire's fleet had underestimated Earth, and now they were going to learn the hard way that humans were not as weak as they thought. The war had begun, and humanity would fight until the very end. The Empire's fleet had never faced a battle like this before. They had expected to overwhelm Earth easily, but instead, they were met with a level of resistance they hadn't even imagined. The humans had struck first, catching them off guard with their advanced technology and precision. The first clash had been a shock. But now the Empire's commanders knew they were in for a much bigger fight than they had anticipated. Admiral Lucas Kane, the leader of humanity's military forces, stood in the command center of Earth's main space fleet, watching the battle unfold on the massive screens before him. His face remained calm, but inside, he was filled with determination. He had known that this moment would come, and he had prepared for it his entire life. He had worked alongside the best minds on Earth, creating technology that could stand against the Empire's might. Now, that preparation was paying off. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and Kane was going to make them regret it. Humanity's fleet, though smaller in number compared to the Empire's massive armada, was far more advanced than the Empire had realized. The ships were designed not only for strength but for agility. They could move quickly, avoiding enemy fire and striking with incredible precision. The human engineers had developed new types of weapons, including energy-based cannons that could penetrate the Empire's advanced shields and missiles designed to disable enemy ships with minimal effort. Kane's fleet continued to make the most of these advantages. Their ships moved with purpose, striking the Empire's vessels from unexpected angles, then quickly retreating before the Empire could respond. The humans had been preparing for this kind of war for years, and they were not going to let the Empire take their home without a fight. On Earth, the resistance was just as strong. The human military had stationed thousands of troops across key locations around the globe, ready to repel any ground invasion. The Empire's forces were used to swift, overpowering strikes, but the humans fought with a kind of grit that the Empire had never experienced before. Cities that were once quiet and peaceful now turned into military hubs. Earth's population, which had once been divided by many differences, came together in the face of a common enemy. People from all walks of life stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to protect their planet. Ordinary citizens, engineers and scientists all picked up weapons and volunteered to defend their world. The fear that the Empire might bring was replaced by a fierce determination to protect what they loved. It wasn't just the weapons that made humanity's forces so strong. It was their will to survive. Every soldier, every pilot, every civilian knew what was at stake. The humans weren't fighting for power, for land, or for riches. They were fighting for their families, for their homes, and for their future. One of the key elements of humanity's strength was their ability to innovate. While the Empire relied on brute force and their overwhelming numbers, the humans used their creativity to find solutions in ways that the Empire hadn't expected. The human fleet was able to adapt quickly to the Empire's tactics, learning from each battle and using that knowledge to improve their strategy. Admiral Kane, who had spent his life studying the art of war, was the mastermind behind many of these innovations. His mind worked quickly, always thinking one step ahead of the Empire's forces. He had created a detailed battle plan that involved misdirection, surprise attacks, and even psychological warfare. Kane understood the power of the human spirit, and he knew that the Empire's arrogance would be their downfall. As the battle raged on, the human forces struck a decisive blow. A small but highly skilled group of human fighters, using their stealth technology, managed to infiltrate one of the Empire's flagship ships. Their mission was to disable the ship's communications and sabotage its internal systems. The mission was dangerous, but it was a success. The Empire's flagship was now cut off from the rest of the fleet, and its ability to coordinate with the other ships was severely hindered. The human ships surged forward, their weapons aimed directly at the Empire's core. They fired with everything they had, the blasts hitting the flagship's vulnerable spots. The Empire's flagship shuddered as the first strike hit, followed by another and then another. The ship's shields flickered, struggling to hold against the human onslaught. Direct hit on the engine core, one of Kane's officers called out. The flagship trembled violently, and for a moment, it seemed as if the entire ship would break apart. But the Empire was not easily defeated. Their flagship continued to fight, launching a desperate counterattack against the human fleet. Kane clenched his fists. "We're almost there. Keep pushing." The human fleet focused all its efforts on the Empire's flagship. The ship's massive cannons fired once more, but it was clear that their power was fading. The human ships had inflicted too much damage. Then, with a final, thunderous explosion, the Empire's flagship was torn apart. Debris scattered in every direction as the once mighty vessel was reduced to a heap of twisted metal. For a moment, there was silence. The Empire's remaining ships paused, shocked by the loss of their flagship. The humans had dealt a massive blow. The tide of the battle had turned. Admiral Kane allowed himself a brief moment of relief. But the war was far from over. The Empire still had a massive fleet, and their commanders were furious. The battle had only just begun, but the humans had given themselves a fighting chance. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions," Kane ordered. "We've won this round, but the Empire will come back stronger. We need to be ready for their next move." The human fleet quickly regrouped, their ships forming tight defensive formations. They had won a significant victory, but they knew that the Empire would not give up easily. The war was still on, and the future of Earth hung in the balance. As the last of the smoke cleared from the battlefield, Admiral Kane looked out into the vastness of space. The Empire had been wounded, but they were far from defeated. Humanity's fight for survival was not over. But now, they had the upper hand. The Empire had been given a taste of their own defeat, and the humans were ready for whatever came next. "We've shown them that we won't back down," Kane said quietly to his officers. "Now we make them regret ever underestimating us." The calm after the storm felt almost surreal. The battlefield was scattered with debris from the Empire's once mighty fleet, and the human ships hung in the void, battered but still intact. It had been a long and brutal struggle, but Earth had won a major victory. The Empire's flagship, the symbol of their power, had been destroyed. Yet, despite the triumph, Admiral Lucas Kane knew the war was far from over. As the human fleet slowly retreated back toward Earth, there was a somber feeling among the crew. Victory had come at a cost. Many ships had been damaged, and a few brave souls had given their lives for the cause. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. They had proven that humanity would never back down, no matter how powerful the enemy seemed. Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the stars outside. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him. The Empire had been dealt a blow, but they would recover. And when they did, they would come back with everything they had. The humans had made a powerful statement, but the real challenge lay ahead. "Admiral, the fleet is ready to return to Earth," one of his officers reported. "We've suffered some damage, but the majority of the ships are still operational." Kane nodded, grateful for the resilience of his crew. They had fought with everything they had, and now they would return home to lick their wounds and prepare for what was to come. "Good," Kane said. Let's head home. But we need to keep our guard up. This isn't over. The fleet began its journey back to Earth, leaving the battlefield behind. The journey would take several days, and during that time, Kane spent every moment preparing for the next stage of the war. He reviewed intelligence reports, examined the status of the fleet, and made sure every officer and crew member was ready for what lay ahead. Back on Earth, the people celebrated. News of the victory spread across the planet, and for the first time in months, there was a sense of hope. The human race had faced the greatest challenge it had ever known and had emerged victorious. The Empire had been forced to retreat, and Earth had proven that it was capable of defending itself. "Move forward," their leader barked, his voice full of confidence. "We've got them on the run. There's no way they can stop us now." But as they rounded a corner, they were met with an unexpected sight. A group of human soldiers, wearing advanced armor and carrying powerful weapons, stood ready. The Empire's soldiers hesitated for a moment, but then they charged forward, believing they could overwhelm the smaller group. What they didn't realize was that the humans had set a trap. The streets were lined with hidden explosives, and the Empire soldiers had unknowingly walked into the perfect ambush. As the first soldiers reached the humans, a series of explosions went off, sending shockwaves through the street. The Empire's forces were thrown off balance, and chaos erupted as the humans launched a counterattack. The Empire's soldiers fought back, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The humans knew their city, their streets, their homes, and they used that knowledge to turn the tide of the battle. It was a reminder that the humans had something the Empire did not: the will to protect what they loved, and the creativity to outsmart their enemies. Back in space, Admiral Kane's fleet had begun to press their advantage. The Empire's warships were now scattered, struggling to regroup after the initial wave of attacks. Kane had ordered his fleet to concentrate their fire on the Empire's weaker ships, disabling them one by one. The humans weren't just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for their future. And every victory, no matter how small, brought them one step closer to protecting their home. The battle raged on, and the Empire's forces were beginning to realize just how dangerous Earth could be. Their arrogance had blinded them to the strength of humanity. The humans were not just defending their planet, they were fighting back with everything they had. And that, the Empire soon understood, was something they had never been prepared for. As the battle continued, the Empire's fleet began to retreat. Their ships were damaged, their morale shattered, and their commanders were scrambling to come up with a new plan. The humans had proven that they could hold their own. And now the Empire had to decide. Would they continue to fight, or would they pull back and rethink their strategy? Admiral Kane watched as the Empire's ships began to retreat, but he didn't let his guard down. He knew this was only the beginning. The Empire was not going to give up easily, and they would likely return with more forces. But for now, the humans had won the first battle. They had shown the Empire that they would not be easily defeated. "We've sent a message," Kane said quietly, his voice full of determination. "And now they know what we're capable of." The humans had done the impossible. They had held their ground against the might of the Galactic Empire, and they had emerged victorious in the first clash. But the war was far from over. The battle for Earth was just beginning. After the unexpected defeat in their first battle with humanity, the Galactic Empire's leadership was furious. They had never expected Earth to be so difficult to conquer. The defeat had shaken their confidence, but it also sparked a fierce determination to strike back. They would not allow a tiny planet like Earth to stand in their way. In a grand war room aboard the Empire's largest flagship, Emperor Orvac gathered his top generals and strategists. The room was cold and silent, the tension thick in the air. The Emperor's face was a mask of anger, and his voice was calm but deadly as he addressed his commanders. "You've failed me once," Emperor Orvac began, his voice sharp and full of authority. "This will not happen again. I want Earth crushed, and I want it done swiftly." The generals stood to attention, their eyes focused on the Emperor. They knew the consequences of failure. Earth had become a thorn in the Empire's side, and now it was time to remove that threat once and for all. One of the generals, Commander Varen, stepped forward. He was a veteran of many battles, and his reputation was built on his ability to execute complex strategies. He had studied the humans' tactics carefully and had come up with a new plan to deal with them. "The humans are cunning," Commander Varen began. "They have caught us off guard with their advanced technology and guerrilla tactics. But their ships are still outnumbered. If we can trap their fleet and isolate them, we can destroy them one by one." The Emperor nodded slowly, impressed by Varen's analysis. "You may proceed, Commander, but be warned, do not fail me again." Admiral Kane knew that the Empire would now stop at nothing to crush Earth. They had shown their true colors, and it was clear that they believed humanity was nothing more than a nuisance that could be wiped out easily. But they were wrong. Humanity had already proven it could fight back, and would continue to do so, no matter the cost. "We're going to need all the strength we can muster," Kane said to his officers, his voice calm but resolute. "Prepare the fleet. This next attack is going to be unlike anything we've faced before." The human fleet had undergone significant upgrades since their last battle with the Empire. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, and their shields stronger. The humans had been forced to adapt quickly, and they had done so with remarkable efficiency. Every officer knew the stakes now. They were fighting for their survival, and the fate of their planet rested on their shoulders. In the Empire's war room, Emperor Orvac was seething with rage. His failure to defeat Earth had shaken him to the core. He had underestimated the humans, and now they had become a thorn in his side. The Empire had always relied on its overwhelming power to crush its enemies, but humanity had proven that raw strength alone was not enough to win a war. "We will make them pay for their defiance," Orvac declared, his voice dark and cold. "Gather every fleet we have. We will crush them once and for all." The Empire's forces, once scattered and disorganized, were now assembling into a formidable armada. Their ships, enormous and heavily armed, were gathering near Earth, ready to launch a full-scale assault. This time, the humans would face their greatest challenge yet. Back on Earth, the human fleet stood ready. Their ships were aligned in perfect formation, every crew member prepared for the battle ahead. There was no room for error. The stakes were too high. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on his screen. The Empire's ships outnumbered them, but Kane was not concerned. He knew that with the right strategy, the humans could overcome even the most impossible odds. "Report," Kane said, his voice steady. "Admiral, the Empire's fleet is enormous," one of his officers said. "They're coming in fast, and they've launched multiple waves of fighters." "We've been expecting this," Kane replied. "Hold our positions. We'll give them everything we've got." As the Empire's fleet approached, the humans made their first move. The battle began with a series of rapid, precise strikes. The human ships darted in and out of the Empire's formation, attacking from unexpected angles, and then quickly retreating into the shadows of space. The Empire's ships fired back with fury, but the humans were too fast, too agile. They had learned from their past encounters with the Empire, and were using that knowledge to their advantage. The Empire's fighters, smaller and faster than their capital ships, swarmed the human fleet. They were armed with powerful weapons, but the human ships were built for speed and evasion. The human pilots weaved through the Empire's attacks, their skill and precision unmatched. The battle became a deadly dance in the void of space, with each side trying to outmaneuver the other. For every fighter the Empire launched, the humans struck down 2 or 3 in return. Their tactics were working, and for the first time, the Empire began to feel the pressure. The human fleet was small, but it was incredibly well coordinated, and their ability to work as one unit was a force to be reckoned with. Admiral Kane watched as the human fleet fought back with unmatched skill. Every move they made seemed calculated, each ship working in perfect harmony with the others. The Empire's ships were large and imposing, but they lacked the agility and teamwork that the human fleet had mastered. One of the Empire's largest warships, a massive vessel that had been leading the charge, took a direct hit from a human warship's main cannon. The impact rocked the entire ship, and sparks flew from its damaged systems. It was a major blow to the Empire's morale. The humans didn't let up. They continued their assault, hitting the Empire's ships where it hurt the most. The Empire's fleet was beginning to buckle under the pressure. They were used to being the ones doing the crushing, but now they were the ones being pushed back. Admiral Kane's eyes never left the battle screen. He knew the Empire's retaliation would be swift, but he was ready for it. The humans had proven they could stand their ground, and now it was time to turn the tide in their favor. But Kane knew better than to let hope cloud his judgment. The Empire would return, and they would come with an army of unimaginable size and strength. The humans had only bought themselves time. The true test of their resolve was still to come. When the fleet finally returned to Earth, it was met with cheers from the citizens. Families gathered to embrace their loved ones, and there was a collective sense of pride in what had been accomplished. But in the back of Kane's mind, there was a question that refused to leave him. Had they done enough? The war had only just begun. In the days that followed, Kane and his officers worked tirelessly to prepare for the next phase of the conflict. The Empire would not rest until they had destroyed humanity, and they would use every resource at their disposal to do so. The humans had no choice but to stand strong, to keep fighting with everything they had. Kane convened a meeting with the high-ranking members of the human command. They gathered in the war room, the tension in the air palpable. The humans had won a great victory, but they had also learned a valuable lesson. No matter how strong they were, they would have to be smarter, faster, and more united than ever before. "We have the upper hand for now," Kane said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "But we cannot afford to become complacent. The Empire will come back stronger, and we have to be ready." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his officers. "This war is far from over. We will fight, not just for Earth, but for every planet the Empire tries to conquer. Humanity will not go quietly into the dark. We will rise to the challenge." The officers nodded, their faces resolute. They knew the stakes. They had seen the destruction the Empire could cause, and they had felt the weight of the responsibility on their shoulders. But they were ready. They had learned from their past mistakes, and they were determined to stand strong in the face of adversity. Over the next few weeks, Earth's forces began to prepare for the inevitable return of the Empire. New technologies were developed, and the human fleet was reinforced. They trained tirelessly, knowing that the next battle would be even more intense than the last. The war was far from over, but one thing had become clear. Humanity had proven that it could survive, it could adapt, and it could fight back. The Empire had underestimated them, and now they knew better. Admiral Kane looked out over the fleet as it prepared for the next stage of the war. There was no fear in his heart, only determination. The humans had shown the galaxy that they would never give up. They had sent a message to the Empire. They would fight, they would win, and they would never surrender. "Prepare the fleet," Kane ordered. "We've proven our strength. Now it's time to finish what we started." The humans had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The Empire was coming, and they would bring their full might to bear. But Earth was ready. Humanity would stand tall, and they would fight for their future, no matter the cost. The real test was just beginning. But this time, the Empire wouldn't have the advantage. The humans had already shown that they were not to be underestimated. And when the next battle came, they would fight with all the strength and determination they could muster. The war for Earth's survival was far from over, but the humans had already won the most important victory of all, the victory of will.